Welcome. I made this maple bonsai start less than 2 weeks ago. Let me show you how.
If you watch my channel, you've probably seen these maple trees in an intro clip. Today, I want to tell you the story of a 3-year project to make the biggest maple air layer that I've ever seen. In this video, we'll show the whole process from start to finish. The story starts just after we bought our home 3 years ago and wanted to clear a little space and put up a new shed. Part of that involved cutting back one of the trunks, but we didn't cut it all the way back to the base. We left about 4 feet. Maples are extremely vigorous and do a great job of backbudding, and over the next couple of years, the trunk started growing back a full canopy. In May of last year, it seemed like the right time to start the air layer process. Let's talk about air layering. Air layering is essentially a process that lets you grow new roots on an existing branch while it's still connected to the main tree. To start the process, we'll need to remove the cambium layer from under the bark of the tree. First, we'll cut 2 lines a few inches apart and then peel and scrape the bark away in between. We're going to be really careful to remove all of the cambium layer, which is a layer of soft tissue just under the bark. We start this process in the spring because that's when the tree is in growth mode and has the best chance of responding. If we pack a moist growing material around it, trees will sometimes start producing roots in the upper cut in response to the severing of the cambium layer. Grow enough roots to support the branch and you can cut it off, put it in its own soil, and it will continue growing, an instant bonsai.
Okay, here's a close-up look at the tree. We made this cut about 2 years ago when we first bought the place. This portion of the tree was really hanging over the yard, and in Seattle we don't get enough light, so wanted to create ourselves a little sunny area. We took that off, and now, after thinking about it, I'm going to try to air layer it. And I think where I'm going to layer it's right down here. Got a good kind of flat place to do it, I think. Not too many disturbances. We'll just see. We'll see how it goes.
The first thing I'm going to do is trim it back to get an idea of the canopy shape and give me better access to the area I want to air layer. I'm selectively removing branches completely from areas where multiple branches are growing from the same spot. I don't want to create a reverse taper. I'm leaving at least 2 leaves on each branch, and I'm selecting to cut just past where leaves are growing in a direction I would like new branches to grow. This is called directional pruning and is a basic clip and grow bonsai technique to shape the tree how you want it. There's a good chance that the new growth will happen at the leaf joint of the outermost leaves, so if they're growing in the direction you want the branches to grow, the tree will take the shape you want. The next step is to get the growing medium ready because I want to give it plenty of time to soak up all the water it can. I'm using a mixture of peat moss and cocoa coir and mixing it in hot water. Sphagnum moss works well also and would have probably been easier to work with. The important part is that you want something that can hold moisture for long periods of time. The bigger the branch, the longer the air layering process takes to work. Common garden soil won't hold moisture well enough. Mix it up well in warm water and let it soak for at least 30 minutes. I ended up getting mine a little too wet, so I added some extra peat moss until I got it to a consistency that would stay in the container. It's important that you take the time to mix it well and give it plenty of time to soak. You don't want any dry spots or inconsistencies. For the next step, I'm going to draw lines where I want the cuts to be. I'm using wires to make guides that I'll trace so I can get the lines as straight as possible. You want the cuts to be smooth and straight to get the best results.
All right, let's see. No idea how this is gonna go. Cuts like butter.
Next step, I'm going to make the cuts and remove the bark. The most important part here is that I'm using a new sharp knife blade that I've sterilized in alcohol. This is basically surgery to the tree and it can easily introduce infection, so be careful. I'm taking care not to go so deep that I cut into the woody part of a tree, just deep enough to get through the bark. The cambium layer is the growing part of the trunk, and so it's very active in the spring. It's located between the bark and the woody trunk. In this case, at least, it makes the bark very easy to peel away from this tree, and so this part of the process goes pretty fast and relatively painless.
It's coming off really easy.
Now, while the bark came off easily enough, the next part takes time and care. You want to completely remove the cambium layer of soft tissue, but not cut too deeply into the wood, which would leave the tree open to infection. Even a few unbroken molecules of the cambium layer running from top to bottom can cause it to regenerate, so this is one of the cases where details do matter. Once the cambium layer is completely removed, the next step is to apply some rooting hormone. Gel would have been easier to work with and maybe more effective, but I only had powder. Apply it along the upper edge of the cuts, which is where the roots will grow from. For the next step, we need something to hold the growing medium in place. One technique is to cut a plastic pot to fit in place, but I'm using plastic sheeting and wire to build a container in place around the cut spot. No matter what you use, you'll want to surround it with several layers of plastic to keep the medium moist. When you add the growing medium, make sure to get coverage on all sides of the trunk. This is important for even root growth. Pack as much as you can and wrap it in several layers of plastic to prevent water loss. On a small branch, the air layer process can take as little as 6 weeks to develop enough roots to sustain the branch. On a tree this size, I had no idea how long it would take. It's not a foolproof process, so I had no idea if it would work at all. All I could do was wait and hope for the best. I checked it at the end of summer and saw what I thought might be some roots, but I wasn't sure. So I left it over winter, and this spring I saw plenty of evidence of root growth, and by the beginning of September I decided it was now or never if it was going to have enough time to set in a new pot for the winter. I pruned it back again so the new roots don't have to work so hard to support a big canopy. It's time to cut it off the main trunk.
More layers to take off. I'm going to leave the final layer on so we keep the root ball.
Right there.
Yep. I think that's going to work.
Yeah.
Let's cut it off. Oh, that's crazy.
It's gonna be neat.
Yeah. All right. Okay, here we go for the root ball. Looks like a pretty good start. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to put it as is. Cut this whole bottom off some other time. Some other replanting. Now. Let's go pick it up for a second. There we go, got it in the pot. Put about 50% peat moss in that.
After giving it a good watering, we'll put it in the shade to rest and check back in on it in a week or so.
It's been a week since the cuts, and I'm super pleased with what I'm seeing here. It's been doing really well. I've been misting the leaves every day just to make sure it's getting some moisture in that way, and I feel like the roots have taken hold because I don't see any leaf wilt on it. It actually looks kind of healthy and like it might even start growing soon. I've been keeping it in the shade so that it's not having to work too hard on these new roots, and overall it's coming along really well. Okay, zooming in on this, one of the things that makes this not yet a bonsai is it's missing taper. That's going to throw the perspective off. The tree down here should be much smaller at its top. So that makes me think this is going to have to grow up a little bit still. So it's going to be a pretty tall bonsai, probably 3, maybe 4 feet tall when it's done. And I want to keep pulling up these branches likely, and they'll become the new branch line. And then maybe some of these down at the bottom will go away, but for now I'll let them grow up here and form part of the canopy. And that will also obscure the thing that you have no real taper on this trunk as it's coming up. Okay, this wasn't really just done in a week. It's taken 3 years to get here, but it's been way worth the effort. Seeing what I'm starting with here, I'm super excited to see what it does in the future. Check back in for updates on this and other trees.